by the end of our meeting, if you choose that as a family, this is something that maybe you guys don't want to do like personally, we still encourage you to participate and come, and the actual workshops that we do will be open to anybody to participate. So you absolutely still can come and learn the day of the events, help with the other females that'll be there, that type of thing. So with that, we have some people on tonight that I don't know. So my name is Dawn Sanchez, and I work in the Wyoming State 4-H office with the livestock projects. And so this is a project that we started last year in conjunction with Eastern Wyoming College and Northwest College. And we're super excited and thankful to those two entities that they're once again helping us make this happen, as well as that Glenn Erickson will be the AI technician from Frontier Genetics that's out of Logan, Utah, will be the individual who will actually be doing the AI and doing some of the educational process when we're there that day. So I'm super thankful to those two people, as well as we have a grant from Walmart that's helping cover part of the expenses of this as well. So we're super thankful to our sponsors and supporters of this program and making it possible for this to be an option for our kids. As we go along, please, I really hope that by the end you guys get all your questions answered. I've got some emails and calls from you guys that maybe some of you that have been on, and we want to make sure that you all walk away with the information that you need in terms of to help make the decision of whether you're going to do this as a family with your does or your ewes, or if it's something that maybe isn't financially feasible or doesn't fit your operation. With it by the end, or you can take the information you gleaned tonight and go make a family decision. So please make this interactive, ask questions as we go along. You sure can unmute yourself and ask those questions, or you can put them in the chat box and I'll try to monitor that chat box as we go along. What I first want to go over is just a little bit about the concept of AIing and the importance of the synchronization process. So one of the things that we weren't able to have is that last year Chad Pace was able to join us, as he's a graduate student in the Department of Animal Science, and he went into a long in-depth conversation regarding the estrus cycle and the ewe reproductive system, and he wasn't able to join us tonight. If that is something that you're interested in, I do have his version of last year's informational session recorded, and I sure could send you that link if you want to gain more information about this. He definitely is much better explaining this whole process than I would be in terms of that. So just know that that is a resource out there if you're interested in that. But basically, one of the things that we have to understand as we go into AIing in the process is the concept of that sheep and goats are seasonality breeders. And what that means by it is that typically sheep and goats breed in the time of year that would reproduce babies for the time that there's actually forage available. And so some animals aren't like that can breed year-round, but sheep and goats tend to breed starting in September, October, November. So us AIing in August takes and put them in something that's called out-of-season breeders. And so with that, then we have to manipulate their reproductive cycle in order to bring them in so that they would be ready to AI or breed. And so just this diagram is one that was provided by Chad, and I'm thankful for him, is that I think it's a great diagram that explains that what happens during those September, October, November months is that the light tends to start decreasing. And so what happens when the amount of daylight starts decreasing is that the sheep, it sends a message to the brain, and that pineal gland starts producing something called melatonin. And if you guys are familiar with melatonin, it's the hormone or the part of the body that starts producing hair growth too. So that's when people or animals like horses and things like that start to grow their winter coats. And so that's kind of connected to that decreasing of sunlight. But that's also what happens is that the melatonin increases, and then what happens is that sends a message to the other part of the brain that starts producing the GnRH hormone, and that hormone then is like the precursor or the starting of that reproductive cycle that starts sending the message to say that it's time to start getting ready to breed. From there is that then it goes to the second one, if you look in this diagram, to the pituitary gland, where that gland then starts producing the LH and the FSH, which then is the other hormonal that sends it to the gonads or the reproductive system to say, okay, it's time to start reproducing. So what we have to do to breed in out of season, which is in August, is an out of season for sheep, is that we have to manipulate the hormones in the animal's body to make them think that it's time to start cycling and start breeding. And it's both for bucks and ewes if you're going to do it with either one of them. This is kind of an opposite, if we think of horses, is horses breed actually more in the summer months because of the same concept, is that they want to foal when the babies are born in the spring, so then the grass comes and it's time to send them out. So there's a reason why like horses and sheep and goats breed at certain times of years, is it's based around when 4-H and things like that are available. One of the things in Wyoming that affects us huge is the nutrients, but also the daylight and the temperature. And so also during those months as it starts to cool off and get cooler, and that also kicks it in. Wyoming's maybe a little bit different, or the northern states than maybe the southern states, and this graph here provided by Chad kind of shows that, is that this was a study that was done on rambulé sheep, and what happens is that if you track that red line on there, is that rambulé sheep, the number of ewes that are in estrus, which means that they're ready to breed, is at a higher point than we are in that thrush level of the summer months, and that's because of their temperature doesn't have maybe the fluctuation, as well as that they don't have the major fluctuation in the amount of daylight hours and things like that that we do. So that's kind of an interesting slide to show the difference of where you live in the country and the ability to be able to manipulate the female cycles to get them to breed. So that's just a little bit of information so that you can understand the process that we're going to take to get these ewes to be in cycle, and this is really important. So with that being said, is that I'm going to go through the process of what it, I'm going to skip this and come back to this. I have having a hard time. Hold on. I'm going to come back to that cycle, is that every year that about 60 million ewes in the world are artificially inseminated, which is a lot. A lot of those are done in foreign countries. The reason why people AI is because, one, they want to breed out of season. Two, that in large scale operations that they can use one ram, collect him, and breed hundreds of ewes, where if they were natural cycling and breeding those ewes, that they could breed a lower number of ewes. Also, it's a way that you guys can increase and get different genetics into your herd and make a rapid change and be able to afford those genetics that maybe you wouldn't be able to afford that otherwise. Maybe you don't have access to a ram, things like that. So those are really the reasons of why worldwide that they're doing artificial insemination. So what I want to do now is I want to take you through the process of what's going to happen with laparoscopic AI. And for you guys that are on, that are doing goats, is that you might be familiar with the vaginal AI, where they actually go in through the vagina directly in and implant that semen in that direction. This is actually laparoscopic that we will be doing on this go around of AI. So we want to just walk you through this concept. We maybe didn't spend time enough last year on this, so we want you to understand what your females are going to go through in the process before we talk about synchronizing them. So what's going to happen is that when you bring your ewes or your does that day, is that they're going to be given a sedative shot in the jugular, and that's something that we will do. Us, meaning you guys, us, the helpers that are there, the college students, those wherever you choose to go, who's there to help. And so we are going to shear, if you look on the picture here on the left, is you're going to shear a spot on that jugular, and then what will happen is that we'll inject a small dosage of sedation into them. We don't knock them completely out. On the does, it's called a wet needle, where literally you take a needle, stick it in the sedation medicine, pull it out, and that's all. Like, there's not even an injection, and you stick it in the jugular and put it out. They don't get very much in there, but it's enough to ease it so that they relax and that they can go through the process. On the sheep, we give them a little bit more sedation. So we'll give them a sedation thing, and then they're turned upside down in a cradle. And if you guys look there, the picture of the cradle is that this is something that we will do. All of this will be taken care of. The technician that day's job is to do the artificial part. So we as helpers take care of this. You guys as producers help with this. If you just come and watch, you can absolutely help with this as well. So those females are turned upside down in a cradle, and here's a picture of that they're strapped in both on the front legs and the hind legs. They're strapped into the cradle, and then once they're in the cradle, the bellies are sheared. And this is really critically important on both the does and the ewes, is that we use clippers that take it really minutely clear down to the skin, and we're trying to get every hair off there, every piece of wool off there as we can. so that none of that gets pushed down into the uterus when we do the incisions. So from there that we use alcohol, and that area that we share here in that middle picture is washed. It's Glenn Erickson, the technician, is very particular on how we do that. He gives us instruction that day as far as that goes. He provides the paper towels. He provides the alcohol. I forgot, he provides the sedation medicine that we use as well. Once it's cleaned, here's a picture in the middle. That's a group of college kids last year at EWC that was doing that. Then what happens is they're elevated, and that's Glenn Erickson, they're the technician, and they're elevated at that point, and that's when he starts the AI process. With that, then what has happened is that he makes 2 incisions in there. And right here in this picture on the left, if you look right in front of the teats there, there's 2 little red dots there that are the incisions. I don't know if you can see my cursor, but right there and right there's the incision marks. Those are where he just takes a scalpel and he makes an incision. What happens is when they take the females and they tip them upside down, is everything inside as far as organs kind of drop down in the front of their cavity. So then what happens is he makes 2 incisions. He puts an air gun in there and he blows the cavity up full of air to make it so that he can really look good with the scope in there. And through one incision is where he puts the microscope. And then through the other incision is where he'll put his long needle that actually has the semen in it that he'll inject directly into the uterus. In this picture, and this is one of the risks, and honestly, we've been involved in the AI personally as producers for, I don't even know, 4 or 5 years, and honestly, I've only seen this happen maybe 2 or 3 times. In this picture, he actually had to sew up a little incision, but typically what happens on the incisions, he puts a dot of super glue in it, squeezes it shut, sprays it with some aluminum cover or Band-Aid, and off they go. So it's not a huge surgical procedure at all. The picture of the TV screen there is super cool, and if you come, you'll get the opportunity to see this. This is where he took the microscope and a camera and stuck it down in, and this shows that internal organs of the female, and he was able to take a view that day, and we projected it on the screen so he can actually pinpoint and show you exactly where he's implanting the semen into those uterine horns. So that's really a cool thing that he's been able to do in his teaching process that you guys will get that day. From there, he then, when he makes these incisions, is that he takes the straw of semen that he's thawed and he implants it in there. The U is put down back in the layman position there in the cradle, and then they're rolled out of the cradle, and they're pretty dopey when they come out of there because they had the sedation, and it takes them, maybe 30 minutes, sometimes longer, depending on the ewe or the doe and how they react, but then they'll come out of it, and then they're up moving, and that's really all. We give them an antibiotic shot to help just as a precautionary thing, just to take care of in case there's some type of, we missed a piece of dirt or something like that that would possibly cause an infection. And then they're sent on their way. One of the things that, as you guys consider doing this, is that it's highly recommended that you do not travel more than 3 hours. So you can bring females to the location and AI them and then take them home that evening as soon as we're done. But if you're looking at that, it's a 6-hour drive, that's kind of a concerning factor. And if that's the case, then maybe we need to look at maybe having you put them at a producer that's locally, and we have a couple options there where you could leave the females for about 45 days. You would have to cover a feed cost, but you would leave them for about 45 days before you move them. There's a couple of producers that we are worked with and have got an option that could be a possibility if you're traveling more than that 3-hour time block. What happens is that you have about 3 hours before that semen starts to attach, and then really it becomes critical for about 14 days. You don't want to do a lot and stress those females at all as far as the semen's implanting on the eggs, and it starts that growth, and so that's kind of the risk with that. So is there questions by anybody about this process of what's going to happen? Does anybody have questions? Okay. You can unmute yourself if you want to ask a question, or you can put it in the chat box, either way. Okay, so what we're going to do now is I'm going to walk you through the process of what the critical part of like what you guys will have to do in terms of getting your females synchronized and ready to AI. This is the protocol that I will say is that used by Glenn Erickson at Frontier Genetics. If you have done AI, either laparoscopic or vaginally, with other technicians, is that they may have a different protocol. So we want to be known that we're following Glenn's protocol since he's the one that's doing it. So there's a debate about how long you might leave a cedar in, is that this is what his anticipation is. He does this as a career, he's done a lot of it, and this is what he feels like is the most successful. His goal is for you to end up with as many females as possible bred, but we'll talk about that in a minute as far as what that is. So since we're breeding out of season, as we talked about, is that August is still considered out of season breeding, is that 2 to 6 weeks before we breed, you guys will want to give an ADE with selenium in shot to your does or ewes. You can get an AD shot from your local vet. I talked to our vet today and they can order you a bottle, or you can get it. There's like a place in Fort Collins, it's called Mountain States Vets. You can get it there. It might just be easiest to have your vet order this, but you're going to give an AD shot. The ADE and selenium is helps with that hormone release, and it kind of gets those ewes start thinking about the concept that it's about time to get breeding. So it's kind of to kickstart their reproductive system. For the AD is that's a shot you can get. The E and the selenium can come in something called BOCI, and that's this picture that I have on here. And this is BOCI that you can just get from your veterinarian as well. And so you can give them a shot of BOCI, and then that will take care of that, vitamin E and selenium. Glenn, this is kind of a new protocol for him. He said that since they started doing this, that their percentage of success rate has went up a bit, and so he's feeling like that it's worth the cost or the expense to do this. By all means, if you absolutely can't get this done, that doesn't mean you can't AI your females. It just means that this is maybe going to help with our rate for the number of percent that we have success with. The dose for that is that it's AD. You're going to give 1 to 2 cc's. 2 cc's if you can, and then the BOCI is about 2.5 per 100 pounds, so you're going to have to gauge how much those females weigh to determine the BOCI shot. So that's 2 to 6 weeks before breeding. If you're only a week before breeding when you get this, it's probably not going to make much difference, so it's probably not worth the expense to put in them. From there, you will put a cedar in 10 days before the breeding window. So what we mean before that is that you are going to pull the cedars at 52 hours before, and we'll get to that in a minute, but you're going to put in the cedars 10 days into your ewes. If you haven't ever seen a cedar, I try to put these on here for you guys to see what it looks like. Is that the picture on the left here is just a picture of the cedar, and you do need a cedar gun, and this is what the second picture, there's the actual cedar gun. It's a lot smaller than a cow one, if you've ever seen a cow one. The next picture just shows the cedar when you just slide it in there with the wingtips still out, and then when it's all the way inserted into the gun, it kind of you can't see these wingtips. What happens is that once this is inserted into the ewe, is that these wingtips right here in this third picture over, they pop out like that, and that's what holds the cedar in there until you pull it out. So that's the process of putting the cedars in. Since we are out of season breeders, is that we're putting those cedars in for 10 days. If you were breeding in season, you can do it longer. You can do, and it's recommended 12 days, and it can really go up to 14 days. So it just depends on what you're trying to do with the AI. The question, in case you have, if you've ever used cedars, if you buy a cedar package right now, I talked to somebody that had a cedar package today, and I think on their package it said that it only took, that the cedars need to be in 5 days. That's the new protocol and the latest ones that were just manufactured within the last month. But we're sticking with a 10-day window because we're trying to get as many females synchronized at the exact same time. Whereas if you're just doing them and then turning them out naturally to breed, is it's not as critical because you're going to have a buck or a billion with them. And so that's kind of the difference of why we're doing a 10-day window, is that we're shutting their system down. So essentially what happens is that you put the cedar in, and then it shuts down that reproductive cycle. So the hormones that the female was releasing, as we talked about, was in the brain. The cedar's put in there, and basically the female thinks that she's bred. So what happens is it shuts down that reproductive cycle. The female thinks she's bred, essentially, is what has happened. And then we pull the cedar, and then we're going to give her a shot, and then that's what starts her cycle again. And she says, oh, and it's time to breed again. So we pull the cedars at 52 hours before we breed. So it can be up to 54 hours, and we have that 2 hours padded cushion there. we can't say for sure that we know a female is going to come in that 52 hours, but somewhere between 52 and 54 hours is when they're going to come in. For frozen semen, if you're going to use fresh semen, then it's 48 hours, and that's critical if you're going to have some fresh semen and you're going to use that instead, that you get within the windows. The reason the difference is that we don't know exactly when those females are going to be cycling and be ready to breed. The most logical point is that 52 to 54 hours, so we're going to try to hit that with frozen semen. The frozen semen doesn't stay as live as long as fresh semen is. So with fresh semen, we can back it up by 4 hours because we're thinking, okay, the semen's going to live a little bit longer. We can put it in there. Maybe if that female's coming in just a little bit early, then we'll catch her at that point. So that's the difference between the two. Once you pull the cedar, you are going to give a shot of PMSG. So PMSG is the hormone that says to the ewe, oh, it's time to get bred, and it starts the estrous cycle. So it makes them so that they're going to come into heat, which means that they're going to be ready to be bred. The PMSG this is a choice you have to make on your own, is that PMSG, the actual one that Glenn recommends, can be purchased from him. It's a 2.5 cc's per sheep or 2 cc's per goat. One of the challenges that we have is that the bottles only come in a dosage to do 10 ewes, so it's a 25 cc bottle is basically what it is. If you purchase that 10 cc bottle and you only want to use 5 this year, you can freeze it in syringes and put it in your freezer, and then you can use it next year. So you would just have it on hand if you're going to AI again next year. This PMSG is one of the expenses that you have because it costs about $15 per dose. So for 2.5 cc's, it's $15. So if you're buying that full bottle to do 10 ewes, it's going to cost you $150. You can use PG600. So last year when we did this for the youth, we used PG600 as most of the kids doing it did. The challenge is PG600 has some adverse effects. Is that if the ewes don't, or the does don't catch you when you use PG600, if they don't catch, sometimes what happens is that they don't catch on the AI, then you turn them out to naturally breed, is that they won't recycle. And they won't recycle sometimes for 2 or 3 months, which means that you have a baby that's born late that doesn't make your fair season time frame. So that is a huge deal of PG600. And sometimes those females won't come in for a whole nother year. So that personally, as I speak from experience, has happened with us. And so we personally have went away from using PG600 because we don't like it when those ewes won't recycle. And so we end up with a ewe that's open or a ewe that's lambing clear months late. And so then we don't end up with a baby that's born on time. So the PMSG that you get directly from Glenn, you have a less chance of that happening for you. The one thing about PG600 is it's a lot cheaper to purchase than what the PMSG is, the hormone from Glenn. So you do have to just make that personal choice. If we know that there's a group of you guys that want to do this in a certain county, then we might be able to buy the dose and mix it and then split it up among you. So if somebody wants to do 8 and somebody else wants to do 2, we can split the bottle so that you guys can share the bottle and you don't have to come up with that huge expense to buy the full bottle. So we can definitely try to help coordinate that, and I'm happy to help with that process with you to try to get that coordinated if you only have 1 or 2 sheep or goats. Once that happens is that what'll happen is that after you do that, you don't really have to do anything with those females, is that then we hope that we hit the 52-hour window. This is a calendar to make it so you guys can kind of see how this works in a visual, if you're a visual person, is that the AI date that we have set in PAL at Northwest College is on August 21st. So what that means is that you would put the cedar in sometime before noon on the 9th, because we are going to AI from 4 o'clock on in the evening. So you would put the cedar in sometime in the morning. It doesn't have to be an exact time you put that cedar in, but sometime before noon, you would want to put the cedar in. You could possibly potentially put it in the night of the 8th, and that is okay too, if that works better. If you have to work or things like that, you can't do it in the morning, you can put it on the evening of the 8th, and it still would fall within that great window. It's perfectly fine. So you would put the cedar in the ewe. Then on the 19th, you would pull the cedar. If we were going to AI exactly at 4 o'clock, we would pull the cedar at noon, and we give that shot of PMSG or the PG600. Then what happens is that we do have to pull them off feed and water. They're off feed for 48 hours. They're off water for 24 hours. So that evening on the 19th, you would pull them off feed, and I couldn't fit that on my little slide here. And then on the 20th, you'd pull them 12 hours. In the evening, you'd pull them off water, or the afternoon about 4 o'clock, you'd pull them off. Or well, it'd be 4 o'clock in the morning. You pull them off food and water to make that. So it's 24 hours for feed, 12 hours for water. And then we'd AI at 4 o'clock the next day. If we have multiple kids, or at the end and we figure out how many are going to AI in PAL, for example, is we'll stagger this so that we try to pull those CEDARs at a different time. And so last year I just sent a schedule to the kids so that they knew that their time to pull the CEDARs was at noon or 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock based on how many we had to do, so that we could try to hit that optimal window of the 50 hours. If you pull at 52, then if we roll a little late and we're running a little late, then we can hit the 54 and we're still okay. So that's kind of our goal, is to hit the 52-hour window. The next slide here shows you if you were choosing to breed in Cheyenne, is that we're breeding on the 27th starting at 4 o'clock. So once again, you would put the CEDAR in on the 15th, sometime before noon or the night of the 14th. You'd leave that in 10 days. You'd pull the CEDAR on the 25th on your slotted time. If we were doing 4 o'clock, you'd pull at noon. You pull them off food and water on the 26th there, and then we would AI at 4 o'clock on the 27th to put you at that optimal time window. So that's kind of the calendar to show. One of the things that's critical, and I'm going to go back a slide to consider, is that like on the PAL date, oh, not the PAL date. Is it the PAL date? No, not the PAL date. This date, the Cheyenne date of the 27th. If you're at the Wyoming State Fair on the 15th, that could be problematic. You're going to have somebody be able to pull the CEDARs and give the shots. So that's critically important that on your calendar you figure out how that happens and how to make that work, because you can't just delay it. Like if you delay it by the 16th, your odds of getting bred just goes down. So you can't pull it early. Like this timing is super crucial to make all of this work and try to get as high a success rate as it is. Doesn't mean you won't get females bred. It just means that your percentage rate could be a lot lower. So that's really important. Some of the other supplies that you will need to make all this happen is that you would need some rubber gloves to put in the CEDARs, especially if young females, teenage kids, anybody that's still going to have raise children, is that you probably shouldn't be handling the CEDAR, as it's got hormones in it, and so really you should wear some rubber gloves when putting that in. You'll need some lube without spermicide, and that's pretty important that you get a lube without spermicide. You can just buy some, like at KY Jelly, something like that at Walmart or your local pharmacy or wherever, but it needs to be without spermicide, because you will put that on the end of that CEDAR gun to put that in. Obviously, you'll need some needles and syringes to put in those injections for the medicine. And then this is just the reminder about pulling the ewes off 24 hours, the does off 24 hours of feed, 12 hours for breeding. Okay, so before we go on to cost or options, questions at this point. Can somebody unmute themselves and make sure that I'm still talking? Anybody hear me? Question? Oh, I can hear somebody. That's a good thing. Can you hear me? I just want to make sure I'm not talking to nobody. Are you guys good?
We have a question here. The question was, you mentioned that we can buy the PMSG from Glenn, or we can go get it on our own. Is there a difference in the quality or the style of stuff that Glenn gets versus what I would buy on my own? Or is there a reason to buy it from him versus myself?
Yeah, no, you can go get it. The challenge becomes is that you're going to have to probably have a script from it. So if it's something that your local vet carries or that you can purchase without a script, you're fine. Does that make sense? As long as that it can be utilized on sheep and goats, you're fine. What we found ourselves is that it's not that easy, right? Is that we had to have our local vet ship it in, and it was almost going to cost us more than what it was going to cost from Glenn. So absolutely not. If you choose to use the PG600, you can just purchase PG600 from like Pipestone Vet. Like there's places out there you can just order it online. Like you don't even have to have a script from a vet to get the PG600. So not at all. You don't have to buy it from Glenn. It's just an option. And the same way with the CEDARs, just so you guys know, is if you need CEDARs and you're gonna, well, you'll need them, but if you need to purchase CEDARs, you can purchase them from any source that you can get them. Glenn does have CEDARs. So if you wanted to call him and say, I want to buy my CEDARs, I need 5 CEDARs from you and I need a bottle of the medicine or whatever, is that he can ship you CEDARs too. It's just an option of convenience, is really. So, yeah. Other questions? Okay. So what I want to go over now is just kind of the concept of expense of how much it's going to cost. So you guys can visually do that, and then we'll talk about semen availability. So these are estimated costs. So just know that is that the CEDAR is going to cost you somewhere between $5 or $6. The PMSG shot is if you get it from Glenn, is $15. PG 600 is going to cost you more like probably $5 a shot. You have to just remind you that there's a risk that those females will not recycle. So I just want that to be known. Like Glenn really wanted me to share with you that again. The AI fee that you pay Glenn is $50 per ewe or doe, and that he provides the sedation medicine for that. He provides the alcohol, the paper towels, things like that, those supplies to actually do that process. Sometimes he provides the antibiotics. Last year I purchased the antibiotics because he didn't have them. So one way or the other, it'll cover your antibiotics because I can cover that if he doesn't provide it. So the actual day expenses, he provides all that for the $50. If you're going to have your females done in PAL, there's no travel cost because the Northwest College is covering that $400 trip charge. What the trip charge is that Glenn charges $400 to travel. That's his gas, his mileage, whatever you want to say to get there. So it's a flat travel fee of $400, and then that doesn't matter whether you AI 1 or we AI 50, is it still a $400 fee for him. So Northwest College has graciously agreed to cover that cost in PAL. At this point, we're working on another donor, so hopefully I can get the Cheyenne one covered. At this point, I do not. So I do want you to know there's a possibility if you have your females done at Cheyenne that we will have to take the $400 and divide it among the number of females we're doing that day. So if we're doing 10 females, it'll be $40 more. If we do 40 females, it'll be $10 more. So it just depends on how many females we're going to AI that day, as far as what that additional trip charge cost will be, or if I can figure out if I can get my sponsor that I'm still working on. So the AD&E this is the estimated cost of what it costs from our vet. So wherever you decide to get that, is that I put ADE there, but it's actually AD that we got from our vet, and it was $16 for like a 50-dose bottle, I think is what it is. So it's pretty inexpensive. The selenium or the BOCI shot, we're using the BOCI for that, was $23. So, and then on top of that is that if you don't have a gun, you're going to have to purchase a CEDAR gun or borrow one. If you have to purchase a gun, they're about $10. Then obviously you'll have gloves and lubes in there. So that's kind of an outlay of the cost that is associated with doing this. Questions about cost on there? I know that I had lots here. I think there's somebody in the chat box. Let me see. If BOCI is used instead, how much estimated? So the BOCI is, the shot is 2.5 cc's per 100 weight. So it just depends on, to buy a full 50 cc bottle, it was $23. So it just depends on how big your females or how many you're going to do as far as that cost goes. Once again, it might be a possibility that we could get a bottle that you guys could share if we know where you're at. That possibly we could get a bottle that you guys could then share and it wouldn't cost. The other possibility too is you might be able to just buy a dose of BOCI from your vet and not have to just buy a whole entire bottle. That's something that you could talk to them about and find out as well. Our vet doesn't carry BOCI, so we had to buy the whole entire bottle in order to do that. But BOCI, I will share, is not a bad thing to have on hand if you're raising baby goats, is that we actually give that BOCI selenium shot when those babies are born. It definitely helps with the tendons and things like that, so BOCI is not a bad thing. Did that answer the question about BOCIs? Okay. All right. Other questions? Any other questions about the cost part? Okay. So the other cost that you have associated beyond this is the semen cost. And so semen can be a challenge, but hopefully, like, we have some things in place that can help you try to get semen if you don't have semen. By all means, you can have your own semen shipped in. We can help you with that. Is that if you're going to buy semen from some location and you need to have it shipped. So let me give you an example. We just had semen shipped this week from, well, 3 different places, but from SEK, or we had one from RSG out of the Midwest, and we had one from REI out of Oklahoma. And REI, they will ship semen, and they'll ship it in their tank, and we were able to have it shipped to Logan, Utah, and put in Glenn's tank, so it's ready to go in his tank, so that when he showed up that day, he brings his semen with you, right, with him, and he's ready to go for you. And REI is a company that doesn't have a huge rental cost, and it's pretty easy to get a shipper tank from them. So honestly, like a shipper tank cost was about $125 coming from Oklahoma to Logan, Utah and back, which is a really good deal. Whereas we had a shipper tank that we were trying to get from RSG out of the Midwest, where a lot of sheep semen is located, and that shipper tank to rent their tank and have it shipped to was over $300. So Hoffman's AI is helping us out and working with us as well out of Logan, Utah, and you can rent their shipper tank, and they coordinate all the UPS, they take care of all the travel for it, they'll ship it out there, they put the semen in and ship it back, and then it gets put in Glenn's tank. And we just did that from SEK, and it cost us $140 versus $250 having it from SEK themselves. So we can help you if you are getting semen shipped from somewhere. Just give me a call, and I'm happy to help work through that concept. And Hoffman's AI has been absolutely amazing in Logan to help us with that process. But cost of shipping on semen does become expensive depending on where it's coming from and what you're getting. We have tried to locate some semen. I purchased some semen personally to try to get it. I found some locations for you guys that gives you some options, so that you could, if there's something on this list you like, you could just say, I want that semen, and it's ready to go. By all means, you do not have to do this. You can go buy your own semen and have it shipped and ready to go as well. So in the goats, if you're looking at boar goat semen, is what we have extra in the tank is this says 2 straws of earmuff. That's the Billy's name, and if you want to Google that Billy, they come from Milligan's Livestock. And then we have 2 straws of Easy Decision. So if you wanted to buy one of those straws, it's $50 a straw, and that includes shipping. It's already in Glenn's tank ready to go. So in the goats, we have 2 straws of earmuff, 2 straws of Easy Decision. From Page Livestock, we have 2 straws of Cloud9, which is about $65 a straw. I didn't put per straw on there, sorry, but it's $65 per straw. Limelight is $70 per straw, and 1 straw of Deep Threat Left that's $70. And then from 5-star goats, we have some Yeti semen, and it's $125 a straw. So that's what we have on hand right now. One of the things that becomes challenging is if you guys do decide you want to do this, and you want one of these straws of semen, you absolutely have to let me know, because what happened last year is people just thought, oh, I'll just use the earmuff semen, and then they showed up wanting the earmuff semen, and some other kid thought they were getting the earmuff semen. So if you're going to use semen off of one of these lists that we have in the tank, you have to let me know so that I don't give it to somebody else. It's not like you can't just say that day that's what you want. You're going to have to make some decisions in advance. In the sheep, what we've got in the tank at Glenn's is we have 5 straws from Hobbs. We have 5 straws of Brickyard, which is $75 a straw, 2 straws of General, which is $100 straws. In Glenn's tank, we have some Fuzzball semen, and we have some Fortune semen, and I need to go look up the price. The Fuzzball semen is about $150 a straw. The Fortune semen will be much less. It's probably the Fortune semen. We worked a deal with Terry Viking as he donated it, but I paid the shipping on it, so I just haven't got the shipping bill to find out how much that's going to cost. But we do have some Fortune semen that probably is going to be somewhere about $25 a straw. From Brister's Club Lamb, this is semen that we would have to know that you want. We could absolutely get it, but it's actually in a different tank. But we can get it in Glenn's tank, and it comes from Clark Lazard. He owned this buck from Brister Club Lambs called Texas Twerk. So if you go to Brister Club Lambs, you could Google and look at that buck called Texas Twerk. And Clark has extra semen at $100 a straw. This buck unfortunately just died on him, so he was very fortunate that he collected and has quite a bit of semen in the tank, and he's willing to sell some of that. We also have the option that in Glenn's tank is some semen from Lish Club Lambs out of Utah. If you're looking for this buck, you're not going to be able to find him online. I can send you a picture of him, but he was the Supreme Champion Ram and the 2008 Midwest Stud Ram. He's out of Bullseye and Ballistic, and that's $100 a straw, and that is in the tank there sitting as well, so it's ready to go for that price. Schroyers, we have 2 straws of Rip It, and that's $150 a straw. And then Storms Hampshire, this is one that I still am going to get shipped. So if you're interested in Storms, this is one you'd have to get to me soon because I need to get this one shipped. Here is that Truck Yeah was the Supreme Champion Hampshire Ram at Louisville in November. So at Nally in November, he won the Open Hamp Show and he won the Junior Hamp Show. And he also was the Champion Hampshire at the youth show that was just held in June at the Midwest. I didn't know they had a junior show there, but they had a Junior Hamp Show and he won that show as well. So his name is Truck Yeah. And I don't know if he has pictures on Storms Hampshire. I don't think they have pictures on there. I could send you a picture of him if you wanted. They also have some Chachine Dorset Semen that's $50 a straw, plus shipping. And why I say plus shipping on there is because that's what you have to pay them is the $50, and then I'm going to have the tank shipped here from them. So that's still yet to be shipped. So this is what we have available. All of these on the list are here ready to go, so you wouldn't have to pay any more shipping. The price on here is what you would have to pay that covers the cost of the semen and the shipping, except for that Storms Hampshire, and you will have to pay that the shipping on that, which I just don't know what it is. Beyond that is that if you have something out there that you want, is that I sure can help you as far as coordinating to get it sent or whatever. You would just be responsible to purchase it. There's lots and lots of places you can purchase semen from. Many producers out there, both Go and Sheep, is that if they have bucks, they'll say on their websites whether they are selling semen or not, or you can pick up the phone and call in and ask them if they have semen available. So there's lots and lots of options out there. You just have to know that we have to have plenty of time to get it shipped, which means that probably your choice about semen needs to be made, I would say, within the next week if you're going to have it shipped in, so that we can make sure that it gets here. The closer that you do, then you have to overnight it and pay more expensive shipping charges, which costs a lot. So that's kind of a challenge of waiting till the last minute to get it shipped. So questions, comments about semen? Any questions out there? Okay. So that's kind of what I had to cover tonight. I wanted to make sure that you guys understand the process of what your females are going through, the cost of it, what's going to happen, how to synchronize those ewes. For really, at this point, what really needs for your guys' next step is that one, you will hopefully be able to process this information and see. If you have other questions, call me, email me. I'm happy to answer those questions for you to try to help you make the decision of whether this is fitting or not. If you choose not to, that's okay too. Please come and join us on both those days. You can come help AI the ewes. Regardless, these 2 days are going to happen because Northwest College is AIing some ewes. So concretely, we are still planning on the PAL one no matter what. We're still planning on the Cheyenne one no matter what, because we're also partnering with the FFA chapter in Cheyenne, and we're going to do it on their school farm. And so they are doing some AI work there as well. The other option I will share with you is that at both of those locations for sheep is that I'm super excited about this, going to do a fresh jump on a buck. And so what that means is that we're going to collect semen on that buck that day and then implant it in the ewes. If that's something that you're interested in, and because you don't like anything on the list, you can let me know and we can talk about whether you could use that fresh semen. The buck that we're going to use in Cheyenne is still working on it. The buck we're going to use in PAL is a Tom Slack buck that's out of IP Clean. And so there's a possibility that you guys could get some fresh semen out of that as well, just as a possibility. So that's another option. If there's something on here, if you're you really want to do this and financially you're struggling to come up the cost of the semen, is that please let me know, and maybe there's an option we can work on that as well to try to make that happen. So that's on the sheep side of it. We're not as lucky on the billy side to have a billy to collect. But questions? Anybody? Questions? No questions. Okay. So with that being said, that's all I have. What I essentially need to know from you guys if I can truly have it by maybe the beginning of next week or so. If you could let me know one way or the other. Yes, we want to do this. No, we don't want to do this. And how many you're going to do is important, because we'll have to do a schedule to make sure that you get seeders pulled at the right time so we can try to get you bred in order. So what I would need is that, yes, we're going to AI 10 does, or we're going to AI 2 sheep, or we're going to AI 1 sheep, or whatever that is, so that we can have a count of how many we're going to actually get to AI, and then we'll release you a schedule ahead of time. The other part is, if you need help finding medication, getting that organized, I'm happy to help you with that process, as well as the semen. If there's something that you do decide you do this, you want off the list, like it's crucial, you let me know, just in case somebody else has already got it, and so you can go to a second option. So with that, that's all I have for this evening. I appreciate you guys joining. As I said in the beginning, if you want the full-fledged whole reproductive cycle that Chad Page did last week or last year, I sure can send you that video, and you could get on that video, and it could help as well. So anybody else have questions before I let